Dr. Helig Gemara. We're going to start on Daf Tzadik Ches Amud Aleph, 2 lines to the top. Ahi Itza, there was a woman, the Tafsa Kasa de Kaspa Biksubasa. She seized a kois of kesef, a silver goblet, for her ksuba. But Rashi tells us it wasn't enough to fill her entire ksuba, was only part of her ksuba. So this would be totally in the machloikis Reb Shimon and the Chachamim if she could still get mezainis. According to Reb Shimon, she is no longer entitled to mezainis, and according to the Tanakama, she is entitled to mezainis. Katava mezainis, and she was asking for mezainis. It came to Rava. Amalahu liyasme, he told Yosy, Zilu havu lo mezainis. Give her mezainis, because less the chash lo Reb Shimon. We don't pass on like Reb Shimon. The Omar lo yamrino on miktas kesef the whole kesef. Reb Shimon holds you don't say miktas kesef the whole kesef, and we say if all the ksuba wasn't still owing, according to Reb Shimon, if all the ksuba wasn't still owing, there's no chiyuv mezainis. Sholach le Rabba Borei de Rabba le Rabbi Yosef moicheres shloi bebesen tricha shvua tricha shvua. If a woman sells without besin, we said a woman has a right to sell karkoyas, to collect mezainis, and to collect ksuba. Does she need a shvua or not? What would the shvu be about? So Rashi says shalagov sayoser, that she hasn't collected more than what she's entitled to take. Does she need that shvua? Zog to Gemara, b'tivoyelach hachraza. So Rabbi Yosef asked back, why don't you ask about hachraza? Does she have to go through a tendering process before she sells a property to make sure that she's properly established the right price? Omer lei, so Rabbi Borei de Rava answered back, hachraza lekem aboyle. I have no suffix that for sure hachraza is required. If a woman, an almana, assessed the value of something, of a property, and then she seized the property for herself, and she took the property, it has no validity. They can take the property away from her and pay her off. Let's analyze under what conditions do we say either achros, if she had called it out and went through a proper tendering process. Why isn't it good that she seized it? It's properly valued. Elalava must be loy achros. It must be that it wasn't properly valued and tendered, and that's why if she took it herself and it wasn't tendered, we say that's null and void. But it's mashma under the same scenario. If she sold it to a third party, even though there was no achraza, in fact, it would be a good mechira. So you seem to have a raya that for herself she needs achraza, but selling it to a third party would not need achraza. So no, it's speaking even with achraza. And Nevada, there was achraza, and if there was achraza for her, null and void. But if she sold it with achraza, then it is good. But to sell to a third party, you need achraza. So why isn't the fact that she did achraza help for her to be able to retain the property herself? They're going to tell her, who gave you permission to take this? And Rashi says, Man shamlech, mimi kabalta mechirazu. From where did you get this mechira? Loy bezin, loy miyasayim. You did it on your own, to yourself. Lefichach leyotza hakarka mishusay yisayim. The karka never left the Rishus HaYisayim. But if it was assessed and sold to a third party, there nofak Rishus HaYorshin. Then it leaves the Rishus HaYorshin. Shari nasul lachachamim Rishus limkar, as a chacham gave her Rishus to sell. Zok to Gemara, kehu gavra, like the story with somebody. Tafkidu gabe kisses the asme. He was owed money by the father who died, and he had by him a pekadon of kisesa. Rashi says it either means misboy, which is fodder, or it means wood, but he had property of the estate as a pekadon, and he decided to seize that to pay off the debt that was owed to him. Also, shamal nafshei He assessed it at 400, and he seized it to cover a debt of 400. Iker went up, and Kombishish it was worth 600. So if his seizure is good, then he made that 200. But if not, then he has to give it back to the Yisraelim. Also, the Kamei, the Rabami, they came to Rabami. Amrle told him, Man Shamlach, who says it for you? And therefore, you have no right to keep it. And therefore goes back to the Yisraelim, and they just have to pay you 400. The Hilchas of Tricha Shvuah, halacha we paskin that when a woman sells property of the estate, she has to swear, like Rashi said, that she didn't take too much. But when she sells, she does not have to make achros. Almana shahoisuk subasa masayim. An almana whose suba was masayim. Umachra shava mana b'masayim. And she sold a property that was only worth a mana, but she got a great deal for it, and she got masayim for it. Oy shava masayim b'mana. Well, what if she took a property that was worth masayim, and she undervalued it, and she sold it for only a mana? The halacha is niskabel ksubasa. We look at it like she got her ksuba in full, and she no longer owed anything. Hoyz ksubasa mana. What if her ksuba was a mana? Umrachor shava mana v'dinner b'mana, and she sold a field worth a mana and a dinner for a mana. And the Gemara is going to elaborate exactly what this case is. The halach is machar bottle, her mecher is bottle. Afilu hi omeres, even if she says achzer dinner liyarshin, I'll give back the extra dinner that they lost out on. I'll give that back to the estate. It's still mecher bottle. Again, the Gemara is going to elaborate on this case. We say your mecher is kayim, and she just has to give back the extra, unless shom kedei sheteshayir besoda bas tisha kavin uvagina bas chatzi kav. The only time we say it's not a good mechira is if had she not sold that extra, there would have been a unified 9 kav, a field, or half a kav of garden, and now because she sold it, the leftover field is smaller than that. That ruins their field, because Tisha Kabin is the minimum size field. Once it's smaller than that, it's not really worth plowing so much anymore. So if she messes up a field of 9 kavin, and now they're left with less than 9 kavin, then the mecher is bottled. And Rashi elaborates a little bit on what the 9 kavin is. Rashi either says it has to be a field worth 9 kavin, or either she has to leave over a field of 9 kavin, or the extra is 9 kavin. So whatever the case is, it means that had she not done what she did, there would have been a field of 9 kavin available, and now there isn't. Uvagina bas chatika. And according to Rebbe Kiva, even a quarter of a kav is enough for a gina, for a garden. What if her ksuba was 400 zuz, and she sold off properties piecemeal? She sold 3 lots of a mana each, and then the last 400 and for the last one, she sold a field that was worth a mana and a dinner for a mana. So the halach is shall achrin bottle. The last sale is bottle. We shall kulon mechren kaim. But the rest of the sales are all good sales. Now the Gemara, the Mishnah earlier had that case of mecher bottle. So the Gemara is going to explain why these different cases are here. Beautiful. Zog to Heilige Gemara. My shno shavim masayim b'mana. Why is it that if she sold a field worth 200 for only a mana, the amr la'at of sadata, we say it's your responsibility, it's your loss. Well, if it's her loss, then flip it around. Then shavim mana b'masayim, she got a great deal, and she sold the shavim mana for masayim. Nami tema amar vachman. Why doesn't she get the benefit of that? Amar Nachman, Amar Rabba Baravua, Zok Nachman in the name of Rabba Baravua, and let's turn over now to Tadik Ches Amid Beis. Kan Shona Rebbe, here in this Mishnah, by telling us that the woman loses out no matter what, we're learning a very important rule, that a koil of alamois, this woman who's selling the karka is perceived as a shliach for the assignment because she's selling the karka on their behalf to pay herself. And what happens when a shliach sells and benefits, no matter what, the benefit always goes to the one who provided the capital. And therefore, no matter what happens here, the balamois, meaning the estate, the assignment, benefit from the extra money that they got for the field. Kiditanya, like we learned in the Brisa, if someone tells a shliach, here, $10, go buy me a basket of beans, and he gave him $10, and the seller gave him 2 baskets of beans, that extra basket of beans goes to the shliach. It's a gift from the seller to the shliach. Div Rabbi Yehuda, that's what the Yehuda holds. Rabbi Yosy or Mecholkin, that's a gift. We don't know if it was a gift for the shliach or whether or not it's a gift to the owner, and therefore they split it 50-50. The problem is, how could you say Rabbi Yosy says Cholkin, but Tanya Rabbi Yosy Rabbi Yosy elsewhere said that it always goes to the balamois. Rami Bar Chama, so Rami Bar Chama told us there's a difference in cases. Like Kasha, Kan Bedavar Sheyesh L'Kitza. If there's an item with a set price, for instance, a basket of beans costs $10. So if I give you $10 and the guy in this seller gives you 2 baskets of beans, he's clearly giving you a gift. And if he's clearly giving you a gift, then where our shofik is, according to Rabbi Yosy, who is he giving the gift to? Is it going to the shliach or is it going to the owner? And therefore, it's cholkin. But where Rabbi Yosy says a koilo bal hamoyis kan bedover sheino kitzva, if it's something like a property which doesn't have a set value, or if it's a piece of clothing, not like nowadays where everything's mass produced and it has a set value, but every piece of clothing was custom. So every item has its own separate price. And a owner gives you a baguette for less money and he charges you less, that's clearly him giving a deal to the purchaser. And that's for sure not going to the shliach. So in our case, where we're dealing with property and the woman selling a property and she's getting a lot more for it, clearly it's the buyer who wants to give the seller a better price, who wants to give him more money. It's surely not a gift. It's surely not a gift. It's just giving him a better deal. And that's shot in our Mishnah. And that's why in our Mishnah, regardless, the woman doesn't benefit. If she makes the balabais lose, if she sells for too cheap, she has to accept the liability for that. And if she sells for more, the advantage goes to the estate. Amar Papa, Hilchos Halacha is Dover Sheyesh LaKitzva Cholkin, Dover Shein LaKitzva Koil Balamois, just like Rabbi Bar Chama explained in Rabbi Yosy. My Kamash Malon, what's the Chiddush of Papa? Shinuya de Shaninan Shinuyahu. Papa's Chiddush is that the teretz that Rabbi Bar Chama gave on the steering of Rabbi Yosy is a good teretz. Iboilu. The Gemara has a shot. What would happen in Amalei? A person goes to a shliach and he tells a shliach, Zovan Liska, sell a liska, which is the shear of a half of a kur of property. And he sold a kur, which is twice what the owner wanted him to sell. What do you say? Moisif al devarafu v'liska biyachani. On the first lesach that he sold, he followed the instructions of the balabayas. So that should be a good mechira. The extra lesach that he sold, of course, is not koine because he's not a shlich for it. Or maybe you say maver al dvarafu, v'liska nami lekani. Or you say that the entire transaction was not following the shlichus that he was given, and therefore nothing is chal. Amar Rabbi Yaakov minar pekoy b'shmei Ravina Toshma. Amar balabayis l'shluchai. If a balabayis told his shliach, tein lahen chaticha lo'arkim. Here's a bucket of meat, and I want you to give one piece to each one of the guests. Unbeknownst to everybody, this was actually kosher. The shliach was too generous, and he did talush time. He told everyone, take 2 pieces. So he overdid the shlichus that the balabayis gave him, similar to the case that we're discussing. I told him to give 1, and he gave 2. The hey not lusholish, and then they went and took three. So the halacha is kulan moel. They're all moel. The balabais who wanted to give one was moel. The shliach who on his own added a second is moel, and the people who took it, who took a third, are also moel. So if you're going to say that the shlichus is chal, even though the shliach did two, but the shliach is chal for the first piece, and it's only the second piece that it's not chal for, that's why the balabais is mo, because there's still a shlichus on the first piece. And by me'ilah, there's yesh shliach with varveir. If you hold when a shliach is told one and he gives two, we look at it like he's not doing the shliach to the balabais at all. It's a completely different action. Well, the balabais are my mole. Why would the balabais be mole? But now we learned that shliach shot the shlichusay balabais mole. If the shliach followed through on the shlichus properly, then the balabais is mole. But lo yaseh shlichusay. But if the shliach didn't follow the instructions of the baal, then shliach mole. So why here is the balabais mole? It must be, in fact, that it's not called maver al devar, it's called moisav al devar. And therefore, in our case, where the balabais told him to sell a dasach and he sold a core, at least a lasach should be sold. So to Gemara, you don't have a raya. The Amr Lahu, the Shliach told the people, I'm doing the Shliach of the balabais, take one piece. And then he said, the Achas Midaiti, and take another piece for me. So clearly he broke up the two actions. One action he was doing as a shlichus of balabais, and therefore the balabais is mal. And the second action that he did on his own is why he's mal. V'shaklu inu tlas, and they took three. Okay, we will stop here, and we will be mamshech tomorrow.